essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to have two talks. The first one just now, we're going to start with the basics of TeamCity Cloud or TeamCity. So we're going to create a new TeamCity Cloud instance from scratch, create projects, and then walk through some of the features of TeamCity Cloud. There's two cool things about it. It is suited for beginners, well, who are maybe even intermediates who want to know, are there any new features in TeamCity you might have missed? But also it's basically a follow-along tutorial style. So I invite you to follow along, to also register a TeamCity Cloud instance with myself. Everything I'm showing is live coded, live configuration. There's not going to be any slides whatsoever. And if you follow what you see on my screen, and also if you check out in the YouTube comments, Yegor should be posting the repository I'm going to be working with, then you'll be able to, follow everything that I do and be able to work with all the features I'm showing of TeamCity. Later on in the second talk, I'm going to talk more about the advanced stuff again, but fear not, let's do some basic stuff first and then get into the advanced stuff a bit later. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to go to jetbrains.com/TeamCity/cloud, and you'll be on the TeamCity Cloud homepage, and you can scroll down and find all the information about the pricing, about what hardware comes with it and software and whatnot. But for now, what I really want you to do is just go and enter your email address and create an account, marco@jetbrains.com. And now I'm hopefully getting an email. Let's see. Right away, I can verify. Let me just try that out. I'm getting a confirmation link. I'm just going to paste it in. Marco Bieler, right? Company Germany. I'm not allowed to put in JetBrains here, so my own company. Put that here. Let's say yes, submit. I'm going to say Marco Bieler TCC demo. So you can choose a domain name. This is the domain name that your cloud instance will be available from, and will be able to connect to. Proceed. Right, and now it just takes about 2 minutes till the TeamCity server is up and running and starting. And during those 2 minutes, I'm going to show you the project we're going to be working with. Because I have a project on my GitHub. It's called A New To-Do List. You might know the project from before, and it's a simple Java Maven application. Do not worry if you're used to Python, if you're used to .NET, whatever. TeamCity basically works with any technology, with any framework. It just happens that I'm most comfortable with Java projects, and a very simple Java Maven Spring Boot project web app with a couple of tests will suit this demo nicely. And also, it doesn't matter too much if the source code is on GitHub or if it's in a Mercurial or SVN repository. TeamCity Cloud also works with all types of repositories, version control systems, apart from Perforce, which is only available in the on-premise version. Now, so we have the code, and then you just hopefully you copy the URL from the YouTube comments. And one last thing about it is that we already have one issue. I have opened up the issue in a different tab here, and the issue is nothing works. So it's a nonsensical issue, but what I want to do is I want to show you all the integration features that TeamCity has with GitHub. For example, with the issue tracker and with commits if builds ran successfully or not. That's why I created this issue here. But these two things are basically all you need to know, the repository plus the issue. And then let's go back to TeamCity. And as you can see, the setup actually worked. So the cloud instance is now there. I'm going to log in with my GitHub account. You could also log in, that was a bit quick, with a couple of other different methods. And now I'm thoughtfully reading through all of these license agreements. I'm hitting I agree, right? And then after a short while, I should be redirected to the TeamCity Cloud overview page. Now, what you'll see here is your TeamCity dashboard. If you're already an existing user of TeamCity, you know this is the new UI. You'll see the projects here. As we don't have a project just yet, we need to create one. And I want to give you a quick win, basically. I want to create a new to-do list project from GitHub in the shortest time possible, hopefully in 5 minutes, depending on how long I explain stuff, and see some test results and see the build log and whatnot. And then I'm going to run you through all these tabs you can see here on the screen and what TeamCity has to offer you. So just to start off, click Create Project. That's all you need to do. And you'll be greeted with the Create Project wizard with a couple of tabs. What I want you to do is I want you to go click from a repository URL and then simply paste in the URL of the repository, a new to-do list, into that field. That's it. If that was a private repository, you could also paste in your username and password or access token, but it's a public repository, so you don't need that. Now, you might have noticed I started out on from GitHub.com, and this is one of the many convenience features that TeamCity has. If you, for example, clicked on from GitHub.com and logged in with your GitHub account earlier, then instead of having to post in the URL or paste in the URL, you'll get a drop-down list with all your GitHub projects, and you can simply select that instead of having to copy and paste the URL. It's just a convenience feature. Works with GitHub, it works with Bitbucket Cloud, works with GitLab.com, right? But for now, we're just going to go, as mentioned, with from repository URL, click Proceed, and you're good to go. Now, what happens next is that TeamCity will obviously try to connect to your version, to your repository, right? That worked, so you'll get a nice little success message. And then TeamCity says, well, the project is called a new to-do list. I recommend on GitHub, so let's have a TeamCity project name, a new to-do list. I'll explain this in a second. The URL, that's the URL of your repository. Then TeamCity also says, hey, I will have a look at the main branch of your repository and poll this branch every 60 seconds for changes. And if there are any changes, then I'm just gonna try and trigger a build. And not only that, but I also have a branch specification, which simply means build every head, or rather every branch in your GitHub repository. So if you had like a develop branch, or if you had a staging branch or a prod branch or whatever feature branch, then TeamCity will also poll these branches for changes and then trigger builds for these branches. And last but not least, what I skipped, build configuration name build. If you're coming from other CI servers, then you might be accustomed to the word job. So a job is you build, for example, the front end, the back end, the whole system, whatever. In TeamCity, it's called a build configuration. And every project needs one build configuration / job. And that's why TeamCity says, hey, let's have a build configuration with name build. You can change it to whatever you want to, but the default for now is just fine. Let's click proceed. And again, once more, there's another one of these tiny, let's say, convenience features, because it's convenience and also intelligence features, because TeamCity now has a look at your repository and scans the files in your repository. And then it tries, in my case, Maven projects, they come with a POM XML file. TeamCity scans your repository, detects there's a POM XML file inside, and then it immediately tells you, hey, why not have a Maven build step, which is a unit of work basically inside your job, inside of your build configuration, which executes Maven clean test. And Maven clean test just compiles your sources and runs the tests for your project. So this is just an auto-detected build step, which TeamCity was smart enough to detect. Doesn't only just work for Maven, works for Gradle, works for Python, works for different technologies, just out of the box. For now, I'm going to go with that. We're going to play with that in a bit, but for now, I'm just going to use selected Maven POM XML file. You select it. I get a nice little message saying, that's it. That's all the configuration needed. And let's click run and let's see what happens. I'm actually redirected back to my dashboard. Now it looks a bit different, because on the left here, you can now see there's a project called a new to-do list with one build configuration. That's the one we just created. And here on the right side, there's a couple of things happening. As you might have guessed, it's basically the overview of your very first build. So the build is created, TeamCity is checking out the sources and runs the build. I will go into detail in a second what's happening on this screen here, but first some, let's say, theoretical stuff. because what you see here is this overview page, the configuration we just did. This all happens in the TeamCity server. The TeamCity server is basically the administration UI. And as you can see here, or in a bit, you'll have the build log and everything available here as an overview. But the actual build is not being run by the TeamCity server. The build is run by a so-called build agent. A build agent is just a Java program you can install on any machine. So it could be locally, it could be some EC2 machine, it could be some Docker container, whatever. You just need to have the TeamCity build agent running. And in the cloud, what happens is that we manage those build agents for you. So you don't have to worry about them. Actually, what you'll see is that when you hover over this little cloud icon over here, you will see that JetBrains hosted agents are provided automatically. Let's see what that means and click this Agents tab. And here on the left, you'll see you have a default pool of agents with 3 different cloud images. And we provide a Linux small cloud agent, a Linux medium cloud agent, and a Windows medium cloud agent out of the box. When you run a build, we will boot up the cloud agent for you. It will be available for a while, then be terminated again once the build's finished or once it's idle. And you don't have to worry about that at all. So these will come out of the box, and you'll find the software that's installed on all these build agents. You'll find it on the TeamCity Cloud overview page. Obviously, you can also connect your own self-hosted agents to your cloud instance. And that's a topic we'll have a look at later on in my second talk of today, because it's a bit more of an advanced topic. But for now, you can see that the build ran. There's now a new cloud agent, right? It connected a couple of minutes ago. And this is the cloud agent that just ran my build. Let's have a look at that now. Just click projects again, go to your, click the build here under your project, and you'll see this is the overview. Actually, let me just run yet another build. You'll see this is an overview page. The first build that ran a couple of minutes ago. The branch is the main branch that got built. There were 3 tests that passed. This is the agent that you can see here, a Linux small agent. And it took 28 seconds in total. So it's just a tiny little overview line. If you want to, you can open up the build number and you'll be brought to that screen you saw a bit earlier, right? And this is just really an overview page where here on this overview tab, you'll see again what I just mentioned, the build duration when it started, the time in the queue and the build agent. You have a changes tab where you would see the changes like your commits in Git that triggered the build. And that was the first build, there are no changes. You start just with the latest revision, but later on when we commit and push changes, you'll see them here. You'll have a test overview where you see the unit tests that ran, where you see the integration tests that ran, if they were successful, if they failed, how long they took, 52 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds, 5 seconds actually. Yeah, this one is rather slow, in which order they ran. You also have advanced features like seeing test history. So for example, if you had 100 test runs, did the tests at one point take longer or was it shorter? All these kinds of data you'll find here under the test overview. You'll have a build log. What I find pretty cool about build log, this is essentially what runs on the build agent. But what you can do is once you open up the build log a bit more, you can see this is a pretty normal Maven build. As it runs the first time, it downloads dependencies. It actually a fair amount of dependencies. Let's see, let's scroll down. Right. At the end, you see those tests were run. The build was successful, but also you can, another convenience feature, just go Control F and search inside the build log, even if it's a big build log. Super cool feature. Instead of having to download the raw log and then opening it up in a text editor, simply give it a try inside the web interface. Convenience. And we're going to talk about artifacts and the more button in a bit. But what I want you to take away is everything you had to do so far was paste in the repository URL into a text box, click proceed a couple of times, hit run build, and your build is basically running. If you're now did this with your own Python tutorial, Python repository or .NET repository, it might look a bit different. The auto-detected build step might look a bit different. But if you followed this tutorial with my Java Maven repository, then it's exactly the same. Good. Now that we had a look at this, what I want to do is I want to get a bit more into detail on a couple of, let's say, basic TeamCity features. First, concepts first. See if we can make this whole process, if we can make the whole project, TeamCity project, even better by adding new features to it. And we're going to do that by editing the configuration of this job, of this build configuration. And just in case you're getting lost, because the first time a user sees the TeamCity UI, sometimes people get lost in navigation. What I want you to do is, once you get lost, you click projects over here, you click your build on the left, and then you'll find on the very right, you'll find a button, edit configuration. So just these 3 buttons whenever you're lost: project, build, edit configuration, and you're basically where I want you to be. So you can follow along. Now, let's have a look at how this job is composed, basically, this build configuration. First of all, you have a link here on the left saying version control settings. The version control settings, you'll see that in here you'll find the GitHub repository. That's the one we added. And every TeamCity project needs a so-called VCS root. This is where your source code comes from, yeah? So every project needs a VCS root. It can be configured by default. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's being polled every 60 seconds for changes. You cannot make the interval smaller in the cloud, but you could make it bigger, so every 2 minutes, whatever. And if your repository needed SSH keys or access tokens, whatever, you could simply put them there by editing these settings here. But I don't want to show that. I want to show you something else. Because here you see the changes checking interval is 1 minute, as just mentioned, but the commit hook is inactive. And commit hook basically means that I don't want to wait all the time, like 1 minute or 2 minutes till my changes get triggered, or a build gets triggered by my changes. What I want to do is GitHub, as soon as it detects a commit, send a message to my TeamCity server. So every time something is committed, I immediately get a notification and immediately get a build triggered. And we can simply enable that commit hook. What you need to do, and this is a tiny detour, you have to enable the commit hook not on your build configuration here, but you have to enable it on the project level. And by this, click the project here, a new to-do list. I'll open it up. Right. Then you'll find a button here on the right side saying Actions, Install Git Webhook. You just click that. And then what you need to do is you need to paste in the repository URL just once more. And you might not be able to do that because this is my repository. You need to be authenticated. So if you fork the repository, you can follow the same steps. Other than that, just have a look and watch. I click Install, successfully install webhook for this repository, right? And if I go back to my configuration, I can now see the commit hook is now active. So now, as soon as I push some code, build should be triggered in TeamCity server. And we'll see that in a second. VCS root, that topic should be clear. It's just where your source code is. Now, I mentioned a couple of times a build is triggered automatically now after the polling or after the commit hook sends a message. But this is not the full story. What actually triggers a build is a so-called trigger, and you'll find these triggers here on the left side in the TeamCity administration. By default, the project you created has a VCS trigger, which simply says as soon as TeamCity detected some changes, commit hook comes in. VCS trigger means just build my commits. As you can see, VCS trigger could have a branch filter saying, hey, I just want to trigger a build for the main branch and a couple of other branches, not for every branch. But the star here means basically every commit in every branch will trigger a commit. Trigger build. You can obviously change that, and there's even advanced options. For example, if you wanted to say that by default, TeamCity would batch a couple of commits into one build, but you could even say you want to trigger build for every single check-in and all sorts of different options you can have here with the VCS trigger. But VCS triggers are just one type of triggers. If you click Add Trigger, you'll see there's also a schedule trigger, which means you can trigger builds on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis, if that makes sense, right? So everything that's scheduled, and have that in parallel to your VCS trigger. You even have triggers like advanced triggers like Maven snapshot dependencies trigger. If you're used to Maven, if you have your POM XML file and inside you have snapshot dependencies, those can change on a daily basis. TeamCity will try to detect those changes in the snapshot dependencies. And once it detected such a change, it will just run a new build. So it's all types of different triggers you have available here. Really powerful. But for now, we'll just go with the VCS trigger. That means we have sorted out where does the source code come from your version control settings, your VCS root. When does the build get triggered through a trigger? And now there's a third concept we need, which is we need a build step. And this was the auto-detected build step that we saw before, which you'll find here on the left side, build step maven. And at the moment, this is executing the clean test goals. What I want to do is I want to delete this here and start from scratch, not use the auto-detected build step that TeamCity recommended early on. I just want to do it manually. Click Add Build Step, and then you'll be greeted with a drop-down box here. And in that drop-down box, you'll find every technology that TeamCity basically supports. So for example, if you wanted to build a .NET project, you would choose the .NET runner type here. If you wanted to run, if your build is running a command line script, you would choose the command line runner type here. If you wanted to use Gradle, you would choose Gradle here, Maven. If you wanted to run some PowerShell scripts, PowerShell or Python. If you wanted to do SSH uploads or even Unity, you just pick the appropriate technology here. The only thing that's missing for now at the moment is Node.js, which will land soon, and you will also be able to pick it here in this drop-down box. Apart from that, you should find pretty much everything you need. I'm going to go with Maven for now, and I'm going to be greeted, hopefully, with a couple of Maven options. And by default, this is simply, well, the Maven goal. So I'm just going to choose clean package here, not clean test anymore, because I want to build a jar file, which I might want to deploy later onto somewhere. So not just run test, but I really want to, use clean package. I can choose the path to the POM file, POM XML file. And I just wanted to show you in TeamCity, again, convenience features, you have these magic, I call them magic icons here next to the text boxes. For example, once you click this magic icon here, you'll see your repository open up in a little tiny dialog window. And if your POM XML file was hidden in a different directory, you can simply browse through your Git repository in this tiny dialog window. And I just want to have a look at, when you're using TeamCity, at these magic icons here on the very right side. And then last but not least, what I find super cool is that for all these, if you're running Maven builds, if you're running Python builds, whatever, just with a checkbox you get, or text box rather, you get Docker support. And Docker support means if I enter an image name here, for example, Maven latest, if I wanted to use the latest Maven image from Docker Hub, then TeamCity would actually automatically pull down the Docker image, run a Docker container, and inside that Docker container, execute Maven clean package. That is a super cool feature. If you have your company-based Docker images with specific software installed, then the only thing you need to do is you need to register your Docker registry, if that makes sense, right? And put in your Docker image name, the tag, and you don't have to do anything else. Everything running the Docker container, stopping the Docker container will be managed by TeamCity. You can have a couple of different options here, saying, for example, it should be a Linux Docker image, Windows Docker image, and a couple of other options. But other than that, one text box, full Docker support. For now, we don't need that, actually. I'm just going to hit save. And this should be it for now. Right, let's see. There's maybe one tiny last thing missing before we finally push some code and see if actually the commit hub is working, if the builds are being triggered. Clean package creates a jar file. And as I mentioned, the build is happening on a build agent. It's some machine. It's not the TeamCity server. But I want to see that jar file that is being produced. I want to see it in the TeamCity overview, in the dashboard. And not just there, maybe later on I want to have a build pipeline where I take that jar file and push it through the build pipeline. And I do that by going to general settings here on the left. And I need to tell TeamCity that my build has so-called artifacts. And in Java, in the Maven project, these artifacts will end up in the target directory. They will end with .jar, obviously. The name doesn't really matter. And you have to tell TeamCity to take that jar file from the build agent and upload it to the TeamCity server so we can see it there. And I'm going to do that by just putting the artifact path inside here. So I'm just going to hit save, and that should be it. Right. Then let's see if my IDE is hopefully still open. Going to open it up. I have the new to-do list project checked out. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a new file, maybe inside here. Hello text. Hello text. Hello world. I'm just going to commit that. So a new file, right? I'm just going to commit and push that. So it's a simple file, a txt file going to my main branch. And not only that, what I also want to do is I want to quickly create a new branch, Marco feature branch, maybe something like that. And inside the feature branch, I'm just going to change the text. This is my new text, right? And I'm going to push that as well. So what I essentially just did is I have one change to the main branch. I created a new Marco feature branch and also pushed something there. So hopefully we should be able to see two builds in a second. I'm just going to quickly switch back to the main branch here so I don't forget this. Let's see. In my project overview page, let me refresh. That was the old page. What you can see already is that there is now two builds running. So that this is the build in the main branch, as seen with this little tag icon, and also the Marco feature branch build is also running. That's super cool. It's two different build agents. So TeamCity Cloud spawned up two different build agents. You can see it with the ID here at the end, BDF76 or 0D31A. And by the way, just in case you're wondering with these agents, which agent is being spawned up, unless you have specific requirements. So for example, TeamCity has the concept of requirements. You want a build agent to have a specific number of CPUs, for example. Unless you specify that, which we didn't, we will always use the cheapest build agent, right? And spawn the cheapest build agent for your builds. In this case, Linux small. Right. And as you can see, these two builds, they were green. The test passed were 3. So you'll now even see the change, which once you click here, you'll see, well, there's one commit, a new file, Marco Bela by myself, a couple of minutes ago. Let me actually have a look at that file. And you'll even see an overview page here with the change details, the revision number. Even not only that, you can open up the file inside. Let me just see. You can open up the file inside TeamCity Cloud. You'll have a small diff editor inside TeamCity without you having to go back to your IDE. So there's a ton of features basically once it comes to having a look at the changes. The changes worked. Right, what else do we have? The changes to tests are pretty much the same. I can open up the tests again, but here there's not much to see. The test overview is still the same, right? And last but not least, one tiny thing changed, and that was what I wanted to show you. Remember, the jar file is being built. And now you can see this icon here on the right, this artifacts icon, turned blue because there are now artifacts. every build produces one jar file. And you can actually have a look at that jar file. You can download the jar file, even have another browser inside that jar file, right? And download it onto your machine locally, or even push it through a build pipeline later on. Super cool. So these are actually, once you click that icon here on Mark or Feature Branch and click the icon, and click the icon down here, these are two different build artifacts corresponding to these two different builds. And now the jar file might not be too exciting, but imagine you have integration tests which print out a ton of logs. So you will be able to see all these log files here, download them, search through them, whatever. So you don't have to log into the build machines to get the logs. Or if you have front-end tests, for example, where you make videos, you can actually push the video straight to as an artifact to the TeamCity server. And if your build failed, then just click this icon, download the video, have a look at where your front-end tests failed, for example. This kind of stuff, that's what you can do with the artifacts. Right. This is already, to sum up again, let's quickly, you click Projects, you click Build, and you click Edit Configuration, just so you're in the administration section again. I just want to do a quick recap of what we just saw is, at first, we just had our repository URL and let TeamCity just create a project with an auto-detected build step. And now what we did is we had a look at what such a build configuration that TeamCity created looks like behind the scenes. And essentially what you have is you have a VCS root with your version control settings, and you can add convenience features like a GitHub commit hook. You have triggers, remember the triggers, VCS trigger, schedule trigger, whatever, Maven snapshot dependency trigger. And you have a ton of different build steps for Maven, Gradle, any technology that you want. And you can also add as many build steps as you wanted. So for example, if I want to do Maven clean package and then execute SSH afterwards, you can add as many as you want. But what I want you to do is, if you're building my project, just add a Maven build step to it, clean package, play with that. And if you have a Python project, .NET project, then please play with your corresponding .NET build step or Python build step. But as you might have guessed, this is obviously not everything that TeamCity has to offer. What I want to show you is that a couple of features where TeamCity, I think, really shines, and that's with integrations with different services, all out of the box. And with different services, I think I mentioned at the beginning, what I wanted to do is I want to somehow integrate TeamCity with GitHub's issue tracker. And then also, when you have a look at, for example, when you have a look at the GitHub overview page, you can see here, well, I just pushed a new file a couple of minutes ago. But it would be really cool if we saw a tiny icon here, if that commit actually had a successful build on the TeamCity server. And you can just get that icon with a couple of clicks with a couple of integrations. And even better, this doesn't just work with TeamCity, with GitHub, with basically every provider out there, but let's not go too far ahead of ourselves. First, let's have a look at this tiny icon on GitHub to see if a build was successful or not. And for that, there's another concept in TeamCity, the concept of build features. You'll see it here on the left again. You just click build features and then select add a build feature. A build feature is something that is somewhat on top of your existing build. It's not a build step like running Maven clean package, but some integrative feature with another service that is plain simply useful, And as you can see, there's a couple of them here. For example, there's an automatic merge build feature, which says if TeamCity is building a branch and that was successful, then it would actually go and automatically merge that branch into another branch, which you specify if you want that. Super helpful feature for some teams, automatic merge feature. If you want to, for example, say you want to send notifications for a build. So if it failed, if it was successful, if you want to spam your colleagues, then you can put in the Slack notifier or you can put in an email notifier build feature. If you wanted to build pull requests, for example, so GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket server, they all support pull requests. If you add that feature, then TeamCity will simply detect a pull request and build that pull request also. If you want to do other stuff like run an SSH agent, yes, right, play with the NuGet repository with Docker, that all works out of the box. So what you should do is go and check out these build features. But what I wanted to show you is the commit status publisher build feature. What this does is commit status publisher means that TeamCity will send all the information about a build. It will send it to GitHub, for example. Or as you can see in this drop-down box, it could also send all the build information to Azure DevOps, Bitbucket Cloud, Garrett, GitLab, our very own JetBrains space, and JetBrains app source. So really everything is integrated out of the box. For now, I want to go with GitHub, right? I need a token, which I'm just going to copy and paste inside here, an access token, right? I'm going to test my connection. That looks like it worked. So I'm just going to hit save. And now the integration should be up and running. That was step 1. Step 2 is integrating with the issue tracker. And now just once more, the issue tracker integration is not done on the build configuration level on build here, but again, you need to go to the project. So in this case, a new to-do list. You go to a new to-do list, click show more, and then you'll find a link here again on the left saying issue trackers. You click issue trackers, create a new connection, and then again, you'll see that out of the box, you can connect to Bitbucket, Bugzilla, GitHub, Jira, Team Foundation, and UTrack. We're going to go with GitHub for now. Again, my GitHub project issue tracker, I'm just going to give it a name. I'm also going to put in my access token inside here. And then finally, I also need to put in my repository URL, right? And then I can test that connection again. I think the issue ID in GitHub was 3. Let's see if that worked. Right. So you can see that TeamCity could actually pull down the information. Summary, nothing works. Stayed open. Well, that looks good. Let's hit create. Right. And now this is all we need to do. So this is the integration with GitHub issue tracker side and also with the commit, with the commit status publisher. Let's see what that actually means. I'm just going to go back to my IDE. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create yet another file. Everything fixed. Yeah, everything.fixed. That doesn't make much sense. Please don't add a file like that. I'm just going to go everything.fix.txt. That's better. Everything is fixed now. Right. Now, when I commit, what I'm going to do is this is the much needed fix for issue number 3. Yes, I think it was 3. This is the reference to the GitHub issue. And then TeamCity hopefully should convert that reference into a nice little link that we can click. And let's see if that actually works. Now let's commit and push this again. This is pushed, right? So I just added a file with the commit message, #3 pushed to origin main. What we now expect is, first of all, that TeamCity somehow sends the build status to GitHub, and that also it somehow lets me go to the issue from inside TeamCity. All right, let me open up a browser again. The project, I'm just going to go to the project overview page here on the top left. I can see that the build is already running. Right, as expected. Now I have just 33 seconds left to tell you about even more nicer features of TeamCity till the build has finished. But hopefully it won't take too long anymore, just 10 more seconds. And again, don't worry, what I just wanted to say is if you got lost somewhere in the navigation in what I just did, we will post that video, this talk, straight online on YouTube, and you'll be able to follow everything, hopefully a bit slower than in your own time, right? Now, what you can see is that the commit up was still working, obviously. The build got triggered. Let me actually just see, let me open up that build what you can see now already in the build is here in the on the overview page. This is the much needed fix for number 3. You can see it's a hyperlink. Actually, when you click this hyperlink and when you open up the issue, you'll be sent directly to the GitHub issue, number 3, where you see that there's a commit that was referenced, number 3, right? And here on the right side, immediately, you see this is my commit, and there's now a green little icon. And that icon says that TeamCity finished a build successfully. Otherwise, you would see a red cross here. And once you click details, you will get redirected straight to this very build, to build number 5 here on the TeamCity server, right? Just a couple of clicks and you have that integration set up. And also now, once you go to the overview page here on the GitHub, right, you see here's your commit, here's the green icon. You'll learn how to spot these green icons on GitHub. If you open up all the commits, you'll see quite nicely this commit has a green icon, so TeamCity ran a build. The other ones do not have such an icon, and there's a couple of other builds where builds were being run while I tested this talk. So simple, nice, and dandy. And if you're using Utrack, for example, instead of GitHub, then you can even have more advanced features like whatever you type into the commit message, you can even set the status of issues, close an issue, reopen an issue and whatnot. But it doesn't work with every issue tracker, but with Utrack, for example, with our own. Right, now to sum this up, what we just saw, we had additionally to what we saw before, we have build features, adding something on top. We added the commit status publisher on top of our build, and we integrated with an issue tracker. What I would like you, or what I would have liked to show you even more is the build pipelines. But then I noticed build pipelines, even though they have super cool support in TeamCity and they're quite a bit different to other CI tools, they are a bit too complex to show in just another 5 to 10 minutes. And I think we're going to have another webinar very soon where we go into detail on how build pipelines work. I also cannot show you how the Kotlin DSL works because everything actually I showed you through the UI. You can just write a Kotlin DSL file. But again, for the Kotlin DSL, we need a bit more time. And actually, I already gave a couple of talks on the Kotlin DSL. You'll find them on our YouTube channel, getting started with the Kotlin DSL video, which is super helpful, which is roughly 50 minutes. And basically everything I showed you here in this talk, you'll be able, I'll explain you how to do with Kotlin DSL as well. So these are two of the topics. We're still gonna put videos up, or you can already find them on our YouTube channel. But so far, this is basically everything I wanted to show you in terms of TeamCity Cloud. I just want to let you know, get an instance up and running. It just takes literally 2 minutes. Get the URL to your repository, paste it into TeamCity, and you'll have a build up and running without you having to worry about the build agents and whatnot. We'll take care of all of that for you. And for all the other features on top, you'll have this video to watch again later on to find out how to enable them, where to enable them. But there's a ton of features. Just keep that in mind. Right. This was the basic section of this talk.